Maintain flight level 310. Break, Allegheny, 444, turn right 30 degrees.
Get on the horn of the 45th recon wing. See what the hell they could be testing up there.
Observation. Throughout the story, whenever the UFOs encounter machines of any kind, the machines usually go haywire. Yet two airplanes have very close encounters, and the only disturbance is some radio static sounds.
Okay, Center. Senate pilot's discretion is approved. The traffic is approaching head-on, ultra bright, and really moving. They're right by us right now. That was really close.
But stick a pin in that point. We'll come back to it later.
Ask them if they want to report a picture.
What's not quite right with close encounters of the third kind? Aliens are magic. Whatever level of electromagnetic energy coming from the alien ship that's causing even rudimentary mechanical objects to operate, it really kind of makes no sense that the TVs are playing clear and not showing static disturbed pictures. Something that would happen in a bad electrical storm. What else is not quite right? Considering how prominent the UFO sightings were, it's NQR that these articles are in the middle of a newspaper. The whole town was darkened, and thousands of people saw them, including police who chased the aliens. There wouldn't be just a couple of articles. The paper itself would be a UFO sighting special edition. Another NQR is that we all pretty much overlooked the fact that Roy had pretty severe radiation burns. On top of being influenced by the aliens, he probably had some form of skin cancer.
This first number is a longitude.
A big not quite right? The coordinates they trace are actually closer to a location in Colorado than Wyoming. Also, without any indication of the hemispheres of the longitudes or latitudes, those coordinates could just as easily point to a location somewhere in China.
We're going to need a geodetic survey map of Wyoming.
Look at you.
A weird not quite right? The radiation designates, let's call them, selected people.
It's better on you. You got it all over. At least I got a tan the other side tonight.
Roy and Jillian have them, but Barry, whom the aliens made a special effort to get, doesn't. Weird NQR number 2. Aliens can come through a ventilation shaft and unscrew a vent from the inside, but can't work a chimney flue door? And the electromagnetic signature from UFOs can not only turn on vacuum cleaners, but can make them move on their own and turn corners and everything. While Roy is constructing his mountain sculpture, the TV is on and Days of Our Lives is playing. Then after some commercials, ABC News comes on.
Good evening. At the top of the news tonight, a rail disaster.
Days of Our Lives is an NBC soap opera.
A train loaded with a dangerous...
What else is not quite right? For a place that's classified and heavily locked down, conveniently, there is no armed uniformed military presence at all on the base, until after Roy and friends escape into the woods around Devil's Tower. At this point in the story, Steven Spielberg starts to whittle down the selected people as they get closer to the objective. In order to do that, he has Larry, who didn't seem like a moron, think that someone is crop dusting on the side of a mountain at night.
They're just crop dusting! Los Angeles!
Larry!
Couldn't come up with any better ways to knock him off, Steven? Funny, not quite right? I guess we should ignore the fact that they just sprayed over the area Roy and Jillian were in, so they should be losing consciousness at this point. But hey, knockout gas can affect you if you're not in the spotlight, right?
Got the lights in the arena down 60%, please. 60%.
think we could ask for a more beautiful evening, do you?
Who is this guy talking to? Dude is just yapping on an open mic. I'll be going to Sizzler for dinner after this is over. Anyone care to join? What the hell, man?
We now show uncorrelated targets approaching from the north-northwest.
Remember that thing about the planes and UFOs from earlier? Throughout the movie, whenever UFOs showed up, there were major electrical disturbances. Yet here, the base is fully lit up, even though there are many UFOs flying around. Either that's an oversight in continuity, or the aliens can affect the power whenever they choose, which in itself is disturbing to say the least. Here's what's in QR scale-wise. The mothership is clearly bigger than the mountain itself, and it would be impossible for it to sneak up on anyone. Taking into consideration the fact that it's 70s technology, once they start showing the aliens, even with suspension of disbelief, you still can't help but notice the seams in the special effects. Like, the giant alien looked and moved awkwardly like a puppet. Because it was. The little aliens looked like little kids in alien suits. They still moved like little kids. Maybe that was supposed to engender a sense of innocence, but it's still one of the weaker displays of special effects in the movie. And the last alien was clearly stop-motion animation. I wonder if Spielberg was ever tempted to do what George Lucas did with the original trilogy of Star Wars and redo the visual effects with today's CGI technology. I know purists just threw up in their mouths a little bit. Another not quite right happens near the end, when we see the volunteers getting ready to go with the aliens. These people were selected by committee. This process took weeks and they were screened specifically for this mission, and the outfits they're wearing are tailor-made only for them. We see 12, I don't know what you call them, galactic exchange students? And then there's Roy, with a suit that fits. What they do? Have a size 34 dumpy made just in case someone shows up at the last second? And while we're here, why are we sending more people when they just gave back about 3 dozen of us? It's not like they can learn any more about human physiology and intelligence, and why didn't they leave a few aliens with us? What, E.T.'s cousin couldn't stay? We didn't even haggle or anything. This movie shows that aliens treat Earth like a weak-ass Persian bazaar. You can go there and take whatever you want. The humans don't even ask for nothing in return. Here's what's really not quite right with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Throughout the movie, Spielberg rode the edge of horror and suspense about the intentions and motivations of the UFOs. Then he made a sharp pivot towards sentimentality and a feel-good ending with Roy happily going into the mothership. And we all left the theater thinking, all's well that ends well. But it didn't end well. It ended with yet another abduction. Regardless of the smiles and hand gestures, the aliens' intentions and motivations remained pretty dark. Just look at what they did. They snatched a child from his mother's hands. Remember, Jillian was selected too, and she even chased after the UFOs after they took her kid. Barry even said he could see her running after him, yet they separated them anyway.
I saw you going up in the air. Did you see me running after you? Yes.
The aliens cut the power and electricity whenever they chose. They displayed the ability to control mechanical devices even at the most basic level by activating simple spring and gear machines like toys and causing metal utensils like knives to fly across the room. Remember, guns are basic spring and gear devices too. Then there were the sinister moments, like the UFOs bursting from a cloud bank menacingly and loudly, as if to display what a possible attack would look like if they wanted to. Then there was the mothership ominously rising up from behind Devil's Tower. We were back there with Roy and Jillian, so we know what that area looks like. And a ship the size of a small city wasn't detected until it wanted them to know it was there. That would suggest perfect cloaking technology. You know, the list of potentially offensive weapons the UFOs demonstrated kept growing the further we got into this movie. And above all of that is the fact that these so-called benevolent, curious extraterrestrials had been abducting people for decades, and this time came to take more as they were establishing official contact. Side note, if you watch the Dark Side of the Moon scene, you'll notice there's no soldiers there. One could say that scientists didn't want to seem aggressive or combative to the aliens by having armed soldiers standing around, or it's possible they took into consideration all the accounts of encounters with the UFOs, and maybe they decided soldiers with weapons wouldn't make a bit of difference if things went sideways during first contact. Before we get into it, I want to preface this part by saying, what we've been going over in this video is the original 1977 theatrical release. Columbia Pictures was near bankruptcy when Spielberg was shooting this film, so they pressured him to finish cutting the movie and put it out because they were in dire need of a hit before the holiday season. As a result, we really didn't get to see much of Roy Neary's personal or family life in the story. So what's not quite right about the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind is, we watched Roy Neary going up the ramp of the mothership with a look of wonder on his face, as if he'd finally achieved a dream he'd always had. But he didn't always have this dream. When we first see Roy, he's just a regular guy with a regular family. Wife's a bit bitchy and the kids are a pain in the ass.
Toby, you are close to death! Come out here!
But other than that, he seems content. Sure, he plays with trains and goofs around with his kids, but we also see him as an employed, responsible family man. Then he has his encounter. Is selected. And from then on is obsessed with a singular thought. This implanted desire makes him think he's going insane.
I don't think I know what's happening to me.
And eventually drives his family away.
Will you hold it 1 minute?
Over the years, various analyses of the film say that what happened to Roy was analogous or allegorical to a religious or spiritual conversion and journey. But whenever anyone does that for religion, it's usually considered cultish behavior, and that's a negative thing.
Well, I guess you've noticed something that's a little strange with Dad. It's okay, though. I'm still Dad.
In the 1977 release, we never saw scenes of Roy wishing he could be someplace else or wondering what else is out there until after he was selected. In fact, he says,
Excuse me, sir. I didn't want to see this.
I sure wish I had.
With the way this story plays out, we see a man possibly taken from his family by forces outside of his control. Roy being selected and going with the aliens isn't so much a fulfillment of a dream or desire from him as it is something more akin to cosmic Stockholm syndrome. Spielberg released later editions of the film in the 80s and 90s where additional footage of Roy with his family are added, and we see a much more dysfunctional family unit. But it doesn't make the end less problematic. If you swapped out aliens for, say, a big titty blonde, you'd still have the same issue. Roy abandons his family for a more interesting proposition. Even Spielberg had issues with accepting that choice, as he, now a family man himself, would later remark.
The difference in when I wrote the story in my 20s and what I would have done today is, I don't think today, with being a dad of 7 kids, I would have let my Richard Dreyfuss character actually get on the mothership and abandon his family to this alien obsession and leave the planet.
Close Encounters of the First Kind. Sighting of an unidentified flying object. Close Encounters of the Second Kind. Physical evidence of a UFO. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Actual contact. Columbia Pictures, in association with EMI, presents Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
With Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg threaded the needle in storytelling with surgical precision. It had action, but no one got killed. It had suspense and shades of horror, but nothing bad ever really happened. And while I pointed out some disturbing things just under the surface, you still walked away feeling good. The mid-70s to the early 80s was a phenomenal period for the filmmaker. Close Encounters was the second of 4 films, which includes Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial he would produce in that time, and not only were these movies huge blockbusters, they would help create the summer tentpole film model movie studios would still follow some 40 years later. On top of that, Close Encounters of the Third Kind became a pop cultural touchstone for a generation and is still warmly received even after 40 years.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative.
If you agree with this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if I missed an observation, let me know in the comments below. And if you would like to support the channel and videos, feel free to donate through PayPal or Cash App, or pick up some NQR gear. All the links are listed in the description below. And thanks for watching.